Hello, busy dads and busy people everywhere. Welcome to another episode of the Busy Dad podcast. My guest today is the great Geoff Thompson. I've really been looking forward to sharing this episode with you. I think that you're going to find a lot of real wisdom and value in what Geoff has to say. Geoff is an award-winning filmmaker and author, a very influential martial artist. Many of you will be familiar with his work in that space. But Geoff's life story is fascinating because of the way he has turned darkness into light. It's a story that he shares in TED Talks, in films, in articles and books, and it formed the assumed backdrop of our conversation today. Geoff suffered abuse at the hands of a teacher when he was young. And then he spent more than 10 years working as a doorman at one of the most violent nightclubs in a violent city in England, inflicting violence using his mastery of martial arts to become a feared presence within that space. But Geoff took all of that darkness, the darkness that his abuser put into him, the darkness that he was nightly returning to in these violent encounters, and he transformed it into light. And all of his books and films are an exploration of light and how we can take what is most damaged in us and convert it into something good. The themes that he returns to again and again are love, the idea of a muscular spirituality that revolves around practice and rigor. And I came away both from reading Geoff's works and from talking to him with a sense of the unbelievable, momentous significance of every single decision that we make throughout our day. Very often in this world we can feel as if our lives are a mere drop in the ocean, that they don't have any real meaning or significance. Geoff will really set you right on that one. He will really show you that every single thing you do matters. And it is incumbent upon us to use our practices, our spiritual practices, our training practices, to turn ourselves into vessels of goodness, to become the sorts of beings where parasitical thought forms and energy forms cannot find a host. I've long had the sense that my training practice, which of course revolves around two physical movements, is a preparation for something that goes beyond the physical, a kind of spiritual practice. And talking to Geoff and reading his books, they really gave me the insights I was looking for. They accelerated my thinking on these matters by, I think, years. This won't be the last conversation that I have with Geoff, and he did the courtesy, showed me the respect of jumping straight in at the deep end. So if you're listening to this conversation, I strongly recommend that you give us your full attention, you give Geoff your respect, and stay with us. If you stay with us, you will find by the end of this conversation that we have lots of unbelievably beneficial insights, not from my end, but from his. And if you want to go deeper into his work, I will share several resources in the show notes. A fascinating man. I'm very grateful to him for giving of his time. I hope that we will interact with him again on this podcast. Take a listen. See what you think. My friends, I give you Geoff Thompson.
So, Geoff Thompson, welcome to the Busy Dad podcast. It is such a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed looking at you online as well. I really like your workouts. I really like what you stand for. And I'm sure you do know it. Forgive me if I'm sounding patronising, but the thing that your work does the most is it exercises the will. And people don't realise that once the will goes, the life goes, because the will is the working arm of the soul. It is in esoteric practice, they call it the causal body. It's the working arm of the soul that creates causation in the world. So we can use the Willforce as a causatory force. So something like the burpee routine you do, which is I had a go, which is very difficult because it works every muscle at once. But the thing that people often don't say about these kind of things, and things like ice baths and things like pranayama, breath training, is it and fasting and early rising to meditate, over and above what it says it does on the tin, it exercises the causal will. And it's the causal will that enables us to create causation, not just causation, but a conscious unity of causation. So all of our parts are creating a causation in the positive. So we're sending God's children or spirit or energy. I had to meditate the other morning, and this voice said to me, "Take care of my children." And I intuitively know what it meant. What it meant was when we think and we speak and we act, we send energy forms out into the world, and they work. And most people are quite unconscious or quite sporadic, so they're sending out energy all the time. That's like an ill angel. It's not kind, and it goes out and it collects karma. It creates causation, it creates effect that eventually adds to the karmic fatberg and also comes back to us. So this is saying when we exercise our causal will, we're able to consciously, as a unity within the self, create kindness in the world, create love in the world. Create through reflection and through the collection of knowledge and through the action of sharing that. We enable the world to increase its negentropy, its order, and its complexity. And you wouldn't necessarily look at something like burpees and get that, but it's a tremendous exercise of the will because you're working every muscle group at once, and the body is in need of oxygen everywhere. It is mentally a very difficult exercise to do. I always felt the same with clean and press. I always felt the same with squats. There's never a queue at the squat rack because it involves so many muscles that we run out of energy really quickly. And the first thing that happens when we feel discomfort is the will falls away. So it's a great way to exercise the will. And for me, that's the one thing. I wouldn't say it's the hidden variable because I think the hidden variable is love. And love as a strong force, as the nuclear strong force that binds everything and makes everything into a powerful nucleus. But it certainly is one of the main factors that we need to exercise our will and not give it away to the latest fad, or overeating or over drinking, or some people will give it away as cheaply as a bit of gossip outside Costa on a Friday. So exercising the will means we can create conscious causation in the world, which is obviously very good for us. It's very good for the world because it's it will increase the negentropy. It's like it's like the energy we put out creates compound interest. So that's what I got when I looked at your routine. I thought this is a tremendous exercise in the will because you would have to. That's the kind of routine you'd have to get your mind right for before you even started because it's so difficult. And I'm sure it's not difficult. I'm sure it's not easy for you, even though you know it. It's a difficult routine. So if it doesn't exercise the will, if you don't get anticipation and a build up before you do it, it's probably not the right exercise.
Absolutely.
I really like that. I like that hidden bonus. We're here to exercise the will. Somebody wrote to me today and was talking about I've got two choices. I can do this and do that. But that would make me very comfortable. But I'm not interested in comfort. I'm interested in learning. I'm interested in developing. I'm interested in knowing more and passing that on. I'm not interested in being comfort. There's no growth there for me at all. So it's a long way of saying I love the routine you do.
Thank you, Geoff. And I mean, so much in what you just said. But one of my clients recently asked me, when is this going to start getting easier, these training sessions? And I told him, I'm 5 years deep and it hasn't happened to me yet. And I often say, look, if if your workouts are starting to feel routine and comfortable and you're not developing that anticipation before you go in, then
I mean, you're not in the room, are you?
no, you're not in the room.
I
And
had a friend say to me once, he said, he said, I'm getting worried, Geoff. He said, he's a wrestler. I haven't been tapped out for 6 months. And I said, that's because you're not fighting anyone any good.
mm,
And he said, how do you know? I said, because you haven't been tapped out for 6 months. He said, if you're not at the bottom of someone's class, how are you going to grow? If you're at the top of someone's class, you're going to stop growing. So for me, the moment it becomes comfortable, either metaphorically or physically, I add a disc to the bar. I leave the class. I go into a class where I am a student again. And that's very good. It's very humbling, but it also gives you that potential for growth. So there is, as they say in Judaic Kabbalah, there is no closure. There isn't closure. There isn't a point where it becomes comfortable. But we do get comfortable with the discomfort. That's the difference. Because we get comfortable with the discomfort because we know why we're doing it and what it's for. So a good bodybuilder understands where the growth is. So he finds the burn quickly and he stays in the burn long. And he develops exercises to get him into the burn. Most people will hover around the periphery of the burn for 2 or 3 hours. They go in and they stay in the burn for 20 or 30 minutes. That's enough. So it's the same with, spiritually, it's exactly the same. I'm into muscular spirituality. So I don't want to, it's not wish fulfillment for me. It's not like dream catchers. And this is about doing the things that are difficult so that I can increase in knowledge and share that knowledge with other people. And then that helps us develop towards some kind of omega point, some kind of grand knowing, and that's what, to me, it feels as though that's what's programmed into us. So the key for me is, the key I found from studying Kabbalah was the secret, if you like, is that if we receive in order to share, because we want to share, we will receive abundantly. And that's considered purpose, logos. If we receive for the self alone, that in Judaism, that's considered sin. It's considered to have missed the target. Because what we receive and keep greedily isn't used. The spirit in us becomes pestilent and wasted. And obviously anything pestilent will attract beast and foul. Bad habits attract bad habits, and bad habits attract bad people. So for me, it's about having that philosophy. Let me just show you, for instance. It's having the philosophy of, I want to receive this in order to share it with people, because people are suffering, as the Buddha says, and the suffering is immediate. So when I've had the opportunity to practice forgiveness in my life, and I know it's metaphysical power. It's a powerful force. It's a freeing force. But when I was trying to explain it to people, I couldn't quite articulate what it was I was feeling, what I'd experienced. I knew it. There was a certainty, and I practiced it, but I couldn't articulate it to people. They weren't really understanding it. So in my meditation, in my prayer, I said, look, I'm talking to people, and I'm not convincing them of the metaphysical power of forgiveness and how freeing that is, and how when we hold a resentment or a grudge, we bind ourselves to the very nature of our grudge. And there is a feeding party going between the two, even if you hate them and they hate you. And I said, but I'm struggling to articulate that. I said, if you bring me the knowledge, if you let me receive the knowledge, I'll write it in a book and I'll share it with people. And that's what came.
And this
is the result.
This is the book that I have been living with for the past couple of weeks, 99 Reasons to Forgive. Just an incredibly powerful
that's what
work.
came. So
yeah,
thank you. And but the key with that was that I received it. Forgive me for interrupting you. I received it, and it came as a download, but it also came with study hours. I had to do 110 hours of study with a Jewish rabbi online. And the study was about repentance, about the power of repentance. Repentance meaning to repair, to return to love. You imagine that we're on the edge of, we're on the kind of outer edges of the nucleus, and we want to get to the center where the love is. So I had lots of study and lots of reading and lots of stuff that I genuinely didn't understand. And my mind kind of broke and stretched in order to get this onto the page. And then once it was on the page, with something brand new to offer, this had something new to offer that isn't in the pantheon. It's not that it's not in the pantheon, but it's not in joined up language. There are lots of great books out there, but this was offering something to add to that. But my vow was that when I receive this, I will write it down. I've got the discipline. I'll sit down. I'll do it. I'll polish it. I'll find a publisher, and I'll put it into the world, and I'll talk to people about it. But once the book was published, I'd made all these promises, but suddenly I felt, I don't really want to do that. Don't really want to give it out. It's such a difficult subject to explain, and it's so difficult to articulate. And I'm going to be, all of these fears came up. I'm going to be talking to very erudite people, very articulate people, intellectuals, and it's, I might get tripped up. All of these negative things come into my mind. But I remembered my vow that I'm receiving in order to share. I'm not receiving in order to keep, because that will spoil it. That will break it. It will become pestilence. The energy needs to come into me and through me. Like Rumi said, the water wheel receives the water and turns and gives it all away, weeping. That's the only way it stays in the garden. It's got to keep moving. So I just sat down one day and I emailed everybody, London Real, James English, and like Sky News, and all of the places that I've been on before. I emailed them all and said, can you get me on to talk about this book? And I went out and I delivered it. And you know what? The publisher said to me, we've got interviews for you all around the world. I did about 50 or 60 or 70, something like that, with doctors, psychologists, with all sorts of people, psychics, mediums. They said, but they're asking, we want to give them a list of questions that they can ask you about, and so just like a feeder page. So I sat down and wrote 5 pages of questions that they could ask. And the 5 pages of questions had information in them that were not in the book. So that only came to me, that bonus, that boon came to me because I started to share. And then when we did the interviews proper, I found myself saying things that I'd never knew before, answering things that I'd never answered before. So the information was already growing in entropy, was already getting compound interest just because I was sharing it. And every time I share it, it increases a bit more, and it increases a bit more. So that's an example of going, well, this is something I don't know, but if you allow me to receive it, I promise, my vow is that I'll receive it and I'll process it and I'll train it and I will deliver it into the world. And obviously I'm continuing to do that. So but that's an example of the fact that the information is there. There's a lot of my life in that book, but there's a lot of stuff that's come through that book that I didn't know. I didn't know before I wrote it. It came to me from these amazing lectures from these amazing rabbis talking about the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and some of the esoteric lessons there. Very powerful. The master sets the table for the servant before he eats himself. Boom. That's it. That's all of it. I'm receiving food, manna, in order to share with people. But of course, it's got to be processed through me. So I get to eat it, to digest it, to savor it, and to process it. And as long as I give it away, it will keep flowing in and keep flowing out.
Maybe we can talk about, Geoff, some of the ways in which you prepare yourself to be receptive to these gifts. What are the practices that open you up to inspiration of this sort when it comes, that make you, as you say in the book, accident prone to happy accidents?
The what they say is this arcana, this knowledge that comes, it's generally a happy accident. You just suddenly find something. Like when I was in judo, I remember my first lesson with Neil Adams. I was training full-time at his full-time class, and he said to me, Geoff, it's all about the grip. Whoever controls the grip controls the fight. And he's the greatest Occidental judoka of his generation. So I'm listening, but I don't understand. but I listen because I said, if he's saying it, then it's true, but I don't understand the word he's saying. It's Greek. He gives me a book on grip, but it makes no sense to me. I'm training full-time hours. I've got 5 judo suits. I get 2 cauliflower ears and all my fingers are pointing in the wrong direction. And I don't understand what he means by grip. Then one day I'm sat out injured and I'm watching him fight his best student, Simon, and they're grip fighting. It just falls in. A happy accident. I just suddenly know what grip is. I understand what grip is. The next time I go on the mat, I'm fighting one of the Olympic squad and he can't throw me for 10 minutes. He can't throw me because I understand grip. And that's never left me. That's what in Islam they would call yaqeen, certainty. I have an attribute of God. I have a certainty, a phase of light that's in me that will never go. It's in me now as I'm talking to you. I feel it. So our way of preparing ourselves to receive happy accidents is to live as cleanly as we can. Later, when you have an alignment, you can go direct and you can ask. You can go to the Akashic or the Aeonic field, as they call it in physics, and you can say, I'm looking for information that I want to bring in and pass on. And because you're a trusted vessel, because you are a trusted escrow account, this energy they will give you this energy, and you'll be able to pass it on.
But how do you earn that trust in the first place? For those of us who haven't reached that stage.
Yeah, well, what they say is that you spend the first half of your life developing a vessel to receive this, and the second half of your life receiving it. But a lot of people spend the first half of their life not preparing a vessel, and then they spend the second half of their life waiting for it to be filled. But it's never going to be filled because no one in the right mind is going to fill your bucket from the well if it's got 20 leaks in it, because it's going to be empty before you reach the village to give it to the villagers. So we've got to prepare the vessel. And for me, that's about becoming what I talked about before, about unified, a unitotal self. So I haven't got 10 or 20 or 30 different personalities that are all fighting to take the wheel at the consciousness of Geoff Thompson. There is just one, what you might call a distinguished aeon or a sovereign self or a divine seer. There's one part of me that captains the rest of it and brings it all to order. So there might be, according to physics, every electron contains a phase of intelligent light, a sentient light, thinking light, and there are trillions of them. So there are lots of beings within us in this collective body that, and some of them do take over the consciousness, and a lot of them have become distorted and end up working through negative filters and do unfortunate things in the world, like the disreputable Mr. Jekyll is always getting the reputable the disreputable Dr. Jekyll is always getting, no, it's the other way around. The disreputable Mr. Hyde is always getting the reputable Dr. Jekyll into trouble. You know what I mean? I can't remember, I forgot the names the right way around, but the negative part of us is always taking over, creating trouble in the world, creating unkindness, and then receding back into the body, and then our conscious self has got to take over. So we find ourselves going, I don't know why I had that affair. I don't know why I stole that money. I don't know why I was unkind. I don't know why I was flirting with that student. I don't know why I was gossiping about somebody that I don't know why I did that. That's not me. That's not who I am. So we've got to recognize that when we wake up, spiritually, that we need to control this being. We need to recognize that we don't have control of all the territories. I might not have control of my physical food body, I might not have control of my palate, I might not have control of my breath body or my intellect or my mind body. I might not have control of my will. So when that Ulysses part of us wakes up, comes back to his home in Ithaca and realizes this is my kingdom, but I'm not in charge anymore. No one recognizes me. We have to gradually start to win that kingdom back. Do I have to get control of my physical body? I can't profess to change the world if I can't even change my own waist measurement, because I haven't got control. I haven't got control of my food. So I get control of the food body. I get control of the breath body, which is pranayama, the breathing. I get control of my mind and my intellect. So I expand them. I study, and I study where my spirit guides me to, and I absolutely get control of my will force. My Willforce is the one that captains all of those energies and makes us work. That's what gets us up in the morning at 4 to meditate. That's what gets us to practice our fasting. So for me, this is about cleaning my body so that it's a cleansed vessel, and it's hermetically sealed so that my vow is gold. My vow has got to be gold. In order to do that, I need to purge all of the negative stuff out of it, which was, for me personally, years and years of violence. I was abused when I was a kid. I ended up displacing my anger and rage in violence. I self-abused. I sexually self-abused. I had a lot of parasites in me, parasitical entities in me that were using this body as a party vehicle. They were taking it out for a ride, and I didn't have control of my conscious will. So I had to go in and find that part of me that was addicted to sexual pornography. Find the part of me that wanted to build a 16-stone armor to protect this frightened child in me. I had to find the part of me that overate. I had to find the part of me that was deeply insecure, below all of the downgrades and all of the physical skills and all of the exotic martial arts. I had to find the part of me that was deeply insecure. And I had to win back all those territories one by one. In Islam, they would call this the greater jihad. And it's like the struggle with the lower body, with the lower ego, not just with the lower ego, but also with the past karma. I had a lot of negative karma. So my job was, through confessional writing with plays, theatre, film, articles, 50 books, thousands of talks. Through my confessional work, I brought out all my sin and said, here's my sin, and I'm going to transform it into, I'm going to take that energy, and through confession, I'm going to bring it to light. And by bringing it to light, it's going to become a light. So it grows fat on secrecy, on being hidden, on shame, on guilt. What I did is I brought it up through my writing, put it on the page, put it on the stage, and often an audience would help me clean it. So something like Fragile. This is a stage play I wrote about the dissonance, the cognitive dissonance caused to me through being sexually assaulted, groomed and sexually assaulted when I was a boy, and the anger and the rage I had towards the person that abused me, towards my mum, towards my dad, towards the law, towards ultimately towards God, who that was deeply hidden. And I was encouraged to write a stage play, and all of the things that blackmailed me, all of the things that I was deeply ashamed of, especially the self-abuse and the sexual self-abuse, that used to torment me and persecute me. If people knew what you did, if people knew what you were. So in order to clean that, this is very visceral but very practical. I personally wrote it as a play, put it on stage, and went through the agony of having it cleaned. Now, the parasite inside me said to me, if you show this work to people, they'll hate you. They'll think you're a deviant. Your agent will sack you. Your wife will leave you. People will think you're a dirty deviant. And I said, yeah, well, I'll take that chance. I mean, it was probably the hardest thing I ever did. I put it on the stage, and it was so visceral that they had the Samaritans at the door every night at the Belgrade Theatre in case it traumatized people. But because it was so honest and it was converted into truth, the truth was converted into something beautiful. People were crying, people were hugging me, people were embracing me. It had completely the opposite effect what the parasite in me suggested. All of the trauma I had with my mum disappeared. All I felt for my mum after I wrote this play was unconditional love. I had a lot of anger towards my dad. I felt they didn't protect me. I felt that they denied it. But all of that was a lie. And I wrote it down on the page, and God said to me, write it down. Let's see if we can qualify this. And as soon as I wrote it down and watched it, all of those lies disqualified themselves, and I just expanded exponentially. I just felt love, love, love. That was a very practical way of me taking the things that blackmailed me and tormented me the most and putting them to the page. So basically, I could put it down to say Rumi. Rumi says love is not a subtle argument. The door there is devastation. So I can say to you, it's all about love. It's just about love. That sounds socks and sandals, but Rumi says love is not a subtle argument. The door there is devastation. In other words, we have to devastate everything in our life that's not love. My self-hatred, my self-harm, my judgment of other people, my fear of the world, my distrust of the world. All of those were perceptions, beliefs, cognitions, precepts, concepts that were stored in my mind that I never challenged. When I put them to the page, the lie just dissipated. So the three-dimensional monster became a two-dimensional cartoon and just dissipated. So the negative aspect of my fear was thrown out into outer space. And the positive part of it, because obviously it's animated, so it contains light, it contains God, came over to me and I expanded in my soul. So I just basically looked at everything in my life that did not come from a place of kindness, and that was my portal to love. Everything is animated by the strong force. Everything is bound by the strong force. The strong force is the most powerful force in the known universe. It's a 100 trillion times stronger than gravity. That's what the physics would call love. Love is a moving force. It's attracted when we want to serve other people. So if I want to serve you today, I want to serve your listeners, your watchers, then because I genuinely want to serve what I've learned, love comes in as a moving force and binds what we're saying and delivers it to people. So if they feel inspiration, if they feel hope, if they see a light, if they think there's a way out of my depression, which there is, then that spirit has come from me through you to them. So what I'm doing is I'm actuating the love energy by serving in a directional manner. So to answer your question, you just clean up everything in your life that's not love. Everything. Make it anything that's not love. Don't let it leave your mouth unless it qualifies itself. As I said at the beginning, when God spoke to me the other morning in my meditation, look after my children. When you think and speak, you create an energy signature. It goes out into the world in very real terms and it works. If it's coming through a negative filter, it's going to go out and it's going to do bad work. It's going to create negative karma, and that's going to add to the negative karma in the world, the fatberg. And of course, it's going to come back to us because it always returns home. Frankenstein's monster always comes back to its maker. So yeah, just cleanse. Start small. Get your food right. Get your physical training right.
How do you conceptualize the relationship between this kind of work? I'm awake 5 o'clock or so, and there's about 2 hours of sort of rituals that I'm going through: breath work, burpee training, cleaning my house, journaling, these sorts of practices that feel occasionally, I have the worry that where the real work is in direct service to others. Maybe I should be spending that time cleaning my elderly neighbor's garden, mowing their lawn for them. Maybe there's a danger, I think, that it can start to feel this work that we're doing can start to feel excessively inward, and that it doesn't have enough of a component of direct service to others. I feel like I spend my life in preparation for service, but when is the actual service going to get started? How do you think of the relationship between, prayer and all of the inner work that you're doing with works, with outward directed, charitable works?
Yeah. Well, there's a lovely saying from Gandhi when he says, "I'm so busy today that I need to meditate for 2 hours instead of 1." So, if I go out in my car now and I want to drive to Scotland, and I'm going to go and deliver a talk there, I can tell you all day long that it's spiritual and that I'm going to go and do this talk. But if I don't put petrol in my car will break down. So I've got to prepare. So I prepare through meditation. I prepare through prayer. All of my preparation, all of my work is directional. So it all comes directly from an intuitive voice, from the inner tutor. So I have this communication with my highest soul, and it will say, excuse me, these are the works that you need to do in order to be able to stand in front of somebody like Max, or to go and stand in front of a group, or to go and deliver a TED talk. This is what you need to do to prepare for that. Just the same as otherwise you could be saying, well, why can't I just turn up and run the 100 meters? Why all the preparation? But, you know, Olympians prepare for 4 years to do a 100-yard, 10-second run. So it's necessary. The preparatory work is necessary. As long as you said, as long as there at some point there is service. So with me, I get up at 4 and I do my preparation early, and then my day is spent either studying or writing. And then I do several meditations throughout the day. That's how I keep myself in the nucleus, in the very center. And then when I'm called to go and do a podcast or to deliver a talk, then often it's just obvious, I just say yes. And sometimes I'm not sure. And if I'm not sure, then I'll meditate on it and I say, I've got this offer. Is it where you want me? So, and it's different for everybody. When I talk about directional service, it's like the difference between an incandescent light bulb and an LED light bulb. An incandescent light bulb loses 90% of its light to heat because it's not directional. An LED goes through a chip and it retains 90% of its light because it's directional. So for me, I call on my spirit, my inner tutor, and say, where do you want me? Where can I serve best? Where can I serve you? And that might be, for me, it's writing and orating and talking and studying. So Jean-Emile Chiron, the French Einstein, would call it reflection, knowledge, action, love, in that order. So for me, it's writing and talking. For somebody else, it might be going into a deep concentration, like Thomas Merton, in a cloistered environment. For somebody else, it might be, working with the sick. For somebody else, it might be being a housewife and preparing the next generation. It's directional. It's different for every person. So I can tell you that my Dharma, I know my Dharma. This is what it is now. I'm doing it. I'm communicating with you. This communication is a manifestation of love. That's what it is. The energy coming between us is love, because we've actuated love, because we both care about who's going to watch this and if it's going to serve them. So we're both genuine in that. So I do it through the books, through the writing, and I've had periods when I've been out talking in prisons or been out talking to groups. Wherever I'm sent, I'll go and I'll get the message, and it's always an invitation. I remember getting invited to Buckingham Palace once with a friend of mine, and I didn't really want to go. It wasn't my thing. I'm not royalist or anti-royalist. It just really wasn't my thing. But I said to him, you must go because it's a great honor. They're calling you there because you've been doing service in the community. And he kept asking me to come with him. And then in the end, I thought, well, if it's important for him to be there, if he's been invited, then I've been invited by proxy. What I need to go and find out why I've been invited. So I went along, and there was a lot of opposition in me towards going, which is a good sign. Means I'm going to find something. I went to Buckingham Palace and I just walked in and I said in my mind, please show me what you want me to see. Why am I here? And I was aware when I was there that I was being observed. I was being watched, not necessarily by people, but by another level of being. I was being observed. And I said, what do you want me to see? And I had a look around and I realized that Buckingham Palace was not a luxurious palace. It was just a big factory, a big hub. And I noticed that the people in there, I met Prince Philip, and I noticed the Prince Philip was serving, him and the Queen at the time were serving other people 24 hours a day. That's all they did. And all this other stuff was a facade. It was just, most of the time they just lived in one room and had egg on toast, and it was a facade. It seemed like it was luxury, but actually it was a necessary hub to serve 80 countries. This was for this was for a particular association, the City and Guilds, And the Sitting Guilds was all about getting people into industry and helping people to develop to become captains of industry. And I observed these people and I felt humbled, to be honest. This guy was 90 at the time. And his work ethic made me look like I was just flirting. And then the next morning, when I lay in meditation, this voice said to me, "You're doing well, Geoff. You're serving people, but you're not serving enough. And you're serving people, but you're serving where you're comfortable. We want you to serve more. We want you to serve where you're uncomfortable." And I knew what that meant. It meant being away from my wife, which made me feel insecure because I hadn't dealt with that then. It meant going to places where I was uncomfortable, particularly middle-class environments, teachers, the NHS, business meetings, places where I couldn't hold my focus pads. I couldn't do my physical techniques. I had to just stand and talk. So I just said, yes, I accept. And suddenly, I started to get invites to go and talk everywhere. And I was frightened of doing it all, but I did it. I went and talked to 200 psychotherapists in London, and I've never been so frightened. I've stood on doors where people have tried to kill me. 4 of my friends were murdered when I was about to. So I know fear. I was sat in a pub with a coffee, bent over. My wife said, "I wish I could take this off you." And I said, "No, it's okay. I know why I'm here." But it was disproportionate.
Yeah.
The moment I got to the college and opened the doors and walked in, it went. And I expanded exponentially. And afterwards, I won't go into detail, but afterwards, a ream of books came to me that offered me arcane at another level again, a whole other level. So, so the idea for me is that I'm constantly talking to my inner tutor and saying, "Where do you want me?" And the service is directional. It's not like I'm going to go and cook meals for the rough sleepers. That isn't my lane. That's not what I've been called to do. I've been called to write books of truth, especially because of my background. I come from a violent background, and I come from a very unholy background because I did lots of not kind things. So there's lots of kids out there who are attracted to that, who will listen to me where they perhaps wouldn't listen to an academic or perhaps a priest or a cleric. So I go out and speak to these kids and I tell them the truth. Violence always rebounds on itself. Any violence you do to other people, you do to yourself, because we're all connected, literally. And I tell them the truth and they hear the truth because it is the truth. And it has the choice, has the opportunity to be an intercessionary power because it's true. If it's got truth in it and you speak it, people feel it. You're not making it up. It's truth. And it don't so much mean what I'm saying, but the spirit in what I'm saying, that's coming through. So if people feel inspired, or even if they feel offended, the work is already done. The spirit has entered them, and it will be like a divine antibody that will go into them, and it work through the veins and arteries, and it will hunt down any bacteria, any virus, any negativity, and it will gradually start to clean them out and prepare them for a new body, prepare them to be a new man or a new woman. That's why I say to people when they say, "Where do I start?" I say, "Where's your pain?" If there's an open wound, then there's an open door. Start where your pain is. If you're angry, if you've got a lot of rage, if you're judgmental, start there. Go in through that doorway, because that contains an animating light. Everything, even our thoughts, are made up of atoms, and atoms contain electrons that contain aeons of light. And every one of those aeons, every single one of them contains the knowledge of the whole universe since the Big Bang. We are filled with the knowledge of everything if only we can access it. But we can if we prepare ourselves.
In your book, there's a point towards the end where you say that attention is the essence of the human soul. And it seems that so many of these practices come back. The common denominator between so many of the different practices that you've described seems to come back to attention and reclaiming our attention and training our attention is how you're attuned to this voice that speaks to you and tells you how to direct your service. It's how you recognize the fear that wells up before you speak to this association of psychoanalysts and distance yourself from it. Can you talk a little bit about the role of attention in moving towards a life that is oriented towards love and service, and perhaps some methods for developing one's attention and
Yeah.
reclaiming it?
Well, this is attention now. This is communication. If I'm down the park with my young son, and he's on the swing and I'm on my phone, that's not attention. I'm not present. It's a lie. I might as well not be there. If I'm on holiday, but I take my laptop because they can't do with me they need to contact me at work and there might be an emergency, I'm not really on holiday. So I don't know myself. I'm lying. You know, if I'm like when I'm working with you now, and we're communicating, my job is to be completely present. So my day today didn't start didn't start when we sat down. My day started this morning. I did some letter writing. I did my normal routine of meditation, but the rest of the day has been in preparation to talk to you. So my idea is that I'll sit and communicate with you, and while I'm communicating with you, the rest of the world disappears. I literally disappear the world by focusing my attention in one place. If my phone was on over here, I couldn't do that. If I was, waiting for a phone call, if I've got something else on my mind, my attention's not there. I can only power that attention. I can only use that attention properly in order to create the reality I want. If I've got all of my collective energy brought together, if my energy is dissipated into, I've got 3 mortgages, I've got a big car, I've got a needy wife, I've got a mistress, I've got 100,000 followers, and I'm scared that it might go down to 90,000. If my attention is focused on things that are outside of my directional dharma, if my directional dharma is to write books and to communicate, and if your directional dharma is to teach as a university lecturer and teach people about the mechanics of fitness and all the rest of it, then at some point, well, let's just say your dharma was just what you're doing now. At some point, we have to get rid of all of the things that aren't our dharma, because they all take energy. We have to bring we have to collect all our energy into one place, so it's laser beamed towards what we do. And at that point, we can attune our attention and create realities with it, which we do anyway, but we're sporadic. Most people create a good day, a bad day, an indifferent day. They create love and then they destroy love with jealousy. They create wealth, but then they destroy wealth by fiddling their books. They create connections, but then they destroy connections because of agenda, because they don't know themselves. They've got one part that wants to change the world, another part that doesn't want to change their socks, and one part that wants to serve struggling people, another part that's shaking his fist at immigrants. One part that's wants to experience love, and another part that is being hijacked 24 hours a day by the television news. So we've got to bring all our energy into one sentient divine CEO, one internal distinguished aeon, or a sovereign ego, one part of us that runs the ship, the Messiah self, the Christ self. And then we go, okay, I've got that part. I know who I am. I know who's looking at these eyes. I know who I'm not. So I'm going to gradually eliminate all of those parts that are not me, because they are consuming energy. Parasitical forces in us and around us plunder our energy on a daily basis. You could lose a day's energy just with 15 minutes of malicious gossip. It's gone. We're tricked into giving it away. So for me, it was about recognizing who I am. You might call this apophatic theology. I'm not quite sure what God is. I'm not quite sure who I am, but I know who he's not. And I know who I'm not. I know I'm not that jealous person. I know I'm not that violent person. I'm not that gossip. I'm not a greedy person. So I eliminate all those. That's the work, until eventually all my energy is going in one direction. Then I can focus on breaking out of the stratosphere of unconscious reality and access any reality I want. I can connect to the aeonic field or the akashic field and bring down information, as providing I'm prepared to receive it and deliver it. I can do that. I can do that at will, but I'm always working through this higher force, and I recognize that higher force when I connect to it. That higher force is me. So the soul and the super soul, the Atman and the Brahman, are one. So when they connect, when the in the Srimad, is it the Srimad Bhagavatam? Yeah, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Sikh Bible talks about God as being the nucleus inside the nucleus. So we find our own nucleus, our own center, our own self, and within that we access everything. And then at that point, there is no difference between us and God. But essentially, we are seeing through God's eyes and we are acting through God. So if you want the energy to have attention, we have to take the energy away from all of the places that we think are where we should be, but they're not. If I've got 2/3 of my energy trying to keep 3 houses and a posh car and 3 holidays abroad to the Caribbean, it doesn't leave me much energy to concentrate on my Dharma. All of those things are okay. There's nothing wrong with them. But at some point, when you wake up to your Dharma, you go, this is my Dharma. This is what I'm called to do. But I can't go and talk on Sky News Live if I haven't got the energy to be absolutely present and have my attention focused in that place, so this spirit can come through me, this advocate can come through and speak through me. If I'm conflicted, you're as likely to get my ego on Sky News Live as you are the spirit. So I've got to be able to hold my concentration so that I have no rebels left in me. Not that we ever get rid of our demons, but we just learn, as they say, to live above them. All energy, when we come to that point of attention and creation, all energy essentially converges into one point. So the positive, the negative, and the neutral combine one single point. Like in a light bulb, positive terminal, negative terminal, the filament that brings them together. Once it's switched on, there's no longer a positive, negative, and neutral. There is just light.
And in your
book,
book,
we have to bring all our energy together.
Well, that I was rereading the chapter of your book this morning where you work through that metaphor of the light bulb and the light.
Yeah.
And this idea that in us there is a dark and a light, there is a good and a bad, and actually effective, loving action in the world requires that we find a way of mediating between those two and combining them into something. I think you said that all good without any of the darkness informing us, we're ineffectual. It's all mercy with no judgment, all dark with no light. It's all judgment with no mercy. But to be strong enough to mediate between those two forces, we need to be able to withstand heat. There's that beautiful Viktor Frankl passage that you quote.
Well, that's why they say the Willforce, or the filament, or the firmament, the filament in a light bulb goes through tremendous tempering before it can take all that heat. It has to reach a very high melting point. So it goes through processes. So the filament, and our filament is our will, has to go through tremendous processes in order to be able to withstand that energy. And I've had rushes of this energy before that I've felt are going to kill me because I've not been quite ready. But that's just burning away all the dross. It's just like refining gold. So yeah, it takes you've got to have enough will force and enough energy and enough attention to win back your own personal unity. When you have a unity, then you can join the federation of unity. You can join and connect to a higher unity. Like in Star Trek, in Star Trek they say that when a world has found unity within itself, it can join the federation of other worlds that have got unity. But not until, if they're still fighting and arguing, they can't unify. So in order for us to unify and connect to the Akashic, we need to win back our own territories. This is standard in esoteric practice, but it's very difficult. That's why Christ called it the bitter cup. That's why Muhammad ran away from it when he heard the voice of Gabriel on the mountain. When he first got that energy coming through him, he thought it was a jinn. He thought he was being possessed, and he ran away. and he asked his wife Khadija to hide him. And Arjuna Pandava was the prince of the world. But when he stood in the middle of the battlefield, he was so terrified and confused that he wanted to abandon his kingdom, he wanted to renounce his kingdom. And it was only Krishna, his higher consciousness, that helped him to understand where he was. And where he was is exactly what you said, in that isthmus, in that firmament, that liminal space between the two forces. We have to be able to sit in that liminal space. But to sit in that liminal space, we need all our energy. We need to be able to captain the will. On the door, I was in that liminal space all the time. If I wasn't, I might get killed. When I've seen people fall out of that liminal space, that you're holding the very center, they collapsed, they had breakdowns, or some of them got murdered. So you have to learn to hold that. And then at the spiritual level, it's even more intense, because you have to be able to sit in the middle of this part of you that wants to give everything away and just take the burden off everybody, which disables them, and the part of you that wants to just have everything for yourself. You have to have this will force, this causal body that sits between those two forces and combines them. It's like a nucleus of an atom. It's two parts positive, two parts neutrons to every proton. So it's 2 parts will to 1 part positive. And once you've got that, the negative electrons are dragged into the nucleus and converted and neutralized. So we've got to have the desire to do good. When we have the desire to do good, then we attract twice the will force that we need to make that nucleus. Once we've got a nucleus, then we attract strong force, which is love. And then once we have the strong force, this nucleus, even though it's invisible, even though it can't be seen, it contains 99.9% of the mass of the being. So I'm all about mass and not about volume, which is what your training's about, which is why I like your training, because it's like, not interested in show, we're interested in mass. I'm interested in finding what works and sitting on the burn. That's what we do spiritually as well. So we've got to have that desire. My desire when I was younger was, I'm suffering, other people are suffering, no one's telling me how to get past it. When I find the truth, I'm going to tell everybody. I hate the fact that nobody's telling the truth. Nobody's saying this is what you do, this is how it is. So when I had that desire to find the truth and tell the truth, I was automatically put on my journey of seeking, my journey of discovery. That's where I came into contact with my idea of a fear pyramid, confronting all my fears, overcoming my fears. I went from being afraid of spiders in the bath to standing on nightclub doors, getting paid 4 times the day rate of a skilled worker. It was just, it was kind of like it's Sodom and Gomorrah and Pompeii brothel all mixed together. It was exciting, it was exhilarating, it was seductive, it was frightening, but man, I learned so much. It was like a concentration. Honestly, Max, you had to be focused. You had to have your attention in the center, and you had to train to have your attention in the center, because if you slipped left or right, you are gone. You are gone. Lots of my friends were murdered, and lots of them ended up in psychiatric units, and lots of them ended up having breakdowns, and lots of them ended up in bad places in later life. You had to have your attention in the center.
What does inflicting violence on a person do to you, the perpetrator?
Of course, you're just inflicting violence on yourself, because just basic physics tells you that everything is connected. Everything is connected, and with the law of reciprocity, whatever you give out, it's not that it's even returning. You're doing it. It's an injury to the soul. You might feel as though you're doing it for the right reasons, but it always rebounds on itself. Now, I learned that the hard way. I was violent because I felt I was doing it for the right reasons, but my 10 years of violence took 20 years of repentance. It was the most purging that violence from my body after I saw the truth. It was very, very painful. And I went through that so I could say to people, your idea of that you need to be violent is a perception. It's a perception. I've known people that have killed other people because they've dissed their one friend of mine murdered somebody because somebody dissed his brother in a rap. That's the power of perception. And he ended up doing life in prison. That's where I met him. Life in prison for a perception. Perceptions create and destroy reality. So if your perception is that you need to be violent, you'll create a world of violence. What we observe is affected by how we observe it, especially if it's an emotional and powerful belief. That's what the egregore of the door taught me. It taught me the truth of martial efficacy. I learned that very quickly. But it also said, do you want to see beyond this? And I said, yeah. And it said, well, why don't you look at, instead of keep trying to fix all the three-legged chairs in the world, why not stop creating three-legged chairs? You're creating monsters with your perception. You're forgetting you've created them, and then you're designing skills and techniques to defeat the very monsters you've created and forgotten. Stop creating them. Instead of trying to fix the world at the level of the screen, follow the light specs back to the projector and recognize that it's not the projector that's wrong, and it's not the screen that's wrong, and it's not the light coming through it. It's what's on the film, the perceptions, the cognitions, the belief, the karma. Clean that up, clean the film. So I started to, instead of creating monsters and the infrastructure that monsters lived in, I started to go back deep inside and find out what the source, what the germ of that was. And I was able to convert it at the level of the germ. So instead of letting this germ rise up and go, we need to be physical, we need to stop a physical threat, I just stopped creating physical threat. So I went from having weapons in every room, reading violence, teaching violence, living and breathing violence, even with my wife, even with sex. I'd be like, can I try this technique on you? I want to try this. I want to try this pin. No, even my intimacy was like a mugging, you know. So it was. So I gradually started to replace all of those weapons with a different kind of weapon. I started to replace it with the weapon of knowledge. Books in every room. That was my weapon. Knowledge. Knowledge dissolves ignorance. You know, knowledge converts perception. Knowledge attracts love, especially if you're sharing. Especially if you've got the courage to go, yesterday I was telling you that violence was right, but I was wrong about that. And I've written about it, and you've invested in that, but I was wrong. And I'm telling you now, it's not the truth. Please listen to that.
Was that an epiphany?
It takes a lot of courage to do that.
Was it like the kind of this turning away from physical violence and discovering new weapons that are no longer physical? Was it like was there an epiphany moment, or was it a gradual dawning consciousness?
There was a few moments, Max. One particular moment when I thought I'd killed somebody. I'd had a few close misses, and then there was one moment where I started to try and pull away from violence, and somebody in one of the clubs I was working saw it as a weakness. And to cut a long story short, we ended up in a fight, and I utterly destroyed him. And it was violent, and it was unnecessary, and it was brutal. And we all thought he was dead. Everyone was saying he was dead. And it was just like, that was my big moment of clarity. I was driving home through the streets of Coventry, and everything was like HD, like five dimensional. It was like everything was glittering and everything was surreal. And I got home, my wife was asleep in bed, and I knelt down by the bed, and she was so beautiful. I mean, I loved her anyway, but I couldn't believe how beautiful she was. She was shimmering. But I thought, I'm losing it. I'm going to lose her. I went into my kids, and my kids were asleep, and I couldn't believe how precious they were. And then I thought about my liberty, and I thought, it's gone. It's gone. My liberty's gone. And I'd fallen away from prayer. And I knelt down, and I said, look, I know I've asked you before, but if you let this guy live, I promise you I'll turn this around. And it was a long night, and it was a painful night. It was a painful morning. And then I got the news that he was alive and that he was okay. And that was it. I came off the door, and I started to gradually, obviously it was a big ship to turn, I started to explore books. I started to do a personal inventory. Like I'd look at myself in the mirror and go, yeah, you've got your master grade in karate. You're a 5th dan, but you're not a master. You're a hypocrite. You're 5 stone overweight. You're addicted to sexual pornography. You're deeply insecure. People don't know it. They think you're confident, but you're deeply insecure. And you are ignorant. You haven't got very much knowledge. You can have a fight and you're questioning things, which is good. So I look in the mirror and go, okay, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to aim to be the master that I'm supposed to be. So I started to master the palate, and I can count on one hand the amount of people I know that can master the palate. So I thought, that's a challenge. I gave up alcohol just as a test to see if I could do it, just to strengthen my will and my attention. And I started to read voraciously, but not just reading, the Waterstones front of shelf. I started on that, but then I was led intuitively to the Bibles. So I read the Christian Bible, I read the Quran, read the Guru Granth Sahib, which is a Sikh Bible. I read the Gita and the Mahabharata and the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is like these massive volumes of work. Then later I read the Zohar, which is 24 volumes, and I didn't understand a word of it. It took tremendous discipline to read the books I was being led to read, but it was basically just, I didn't understand it as an ego, but it shattered my ego to sit and read it. But my soul understood it like it was reading a barcode.
Yes.
So I was suddenly led to all of this very exciting, massive knowledge base, which is the true weapon. How are we going to overcome evil? There's a line in, I don't know if I sent you a copy of my film, An Angel on Oxford Street, but there's a line in there where the character says, what are you going to do about the evil? And he says, I'm going to overcome evil with good. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dress it and feed it and robe it in the armor of the good. And when we dress ignorance in knowledge, we sanctify everything we touch. Everything that's in privation, everything that feels evil, suddenly becomes sanctified. Everything becomes whole. Everything becomes stable. It becomes its own nucleus. So I've just been led intuitively to read very difficult books, and each of those books, for instance, the Zohar was 24 volumes.
Mhm.
Can you see it?
Yeah, there it is.
Ones.
Yeah. Wow.
So I read the Zohar. I took 3 months off work to read full time, and then I took 70 pages of notes intuitively, and then I reduced those notes by taking notes on notes, and eventually reduced it down from 24 volumes and 70 pages of notes to one word, and that was spirit, breath. So I started to see that as a concept nucleus, like as an acorn that contained another ream of knowledge. And I started to study spirit and breath. And that led me into lots of all sorts of other different places. But ultimately, none of it means anything if I'm not able to sit and if I'm not able to think kindly about somebody, if I'm not able to write a book that I'm asked to write and deliver it, if I'm not able to do the things that are called on me to do, if I can't do them, it's not of much help. The only reason I receive this stuff is in order to share it. And if I don't share it, then it becomes pestilent, like any energy that becomes stagnant. So so we need to bring all our energy in from all of the places. Like for me, when I had this last epiphany about 5 years ago, I was guided to get rid of everything. That was the word. Get rid of everything and just do this. Just concentrate on what we're doing here now. So I had an apartment in London. I got 2 houses in Coventry. I sold everything, bought a little place in Stratford, so there's no mortgage. So I haven't got to concentrate on making money. I've got to concentrate on bringing up the kids. They're all grown up. I haven't got to concentrate on a fast car. I've got the smallest car in the world, and it's all paid for. I just need to bring in enough money to pay my groceries. Everything I need comes, but it means I've got the energy to sit down and study the Zohar. It means I've got the energy to sit down and read to read the Bhagavatam or the Guru Granth Sahib or whatever it is I'm called to read. It's like saying, okay, for the next 3 months, you're reading this book, and you don't need to know why. It will just become evident. And then you find stuff in there that's, God, I knew this. I knew that I learnt this when I was a doorman 40 years ago, but I couldn't articulate it. And now, 40 years later, this amazing book written by the 10 gurus of the Sikh faith, starting with Guru Nanak, he's saying to me, I'm saying, I've always known that everything's in me. Now he's saying to me, the city and the streets and the houses and the shops, they are all in you. Anybody that looks outside for the truth is a foolish demon. It's all in you. Geoff says the same. It's about having the attention, the concentration to look inside and self-observe. And the thing you observe first, he says, is that it's all happening in you. My job isn't to go out and, to change people in the world. My job is just to change me and to convert me and become my own nucleus. And then the world around me will change. It will form around me concentric circles like, like electrons around an atom. It will become ordered. So that's the exciting thing. The work is just with you. So if there's somebody out there now who's struggling with depression, or they've got a wound, or they've got a resentment, or they're lost, that open wound is the open door. That's where you start. Rather than going, well, that's me for the rest of my life. Let's go through that doorway. Let's have a look. Let's question it. There's people out there that have gone through that doorway before. I'm living proof that you can get beyond being abused as a kid. I could have used that all my life if I wanted to. I'd love to have achieved, but I'm damaged, I'm broken because I was abused as a kid. Actually, I saw that as a massive font of energy that I could draw from. If I take all the labels off, anger, fear, depression, anxiety, abuse, if I take all the labels off all of those things, what am I left with? Energy, pure unadulterated energy. This is what the Buddha said to one of his students. He said, what does enlightenment feel like? He said, I have been freed from denotation by consciousness. Consciousness has freed me from denotation. No labels, just energy. And my ability to do what I want with the energy. To move it, or just to sit in the center and just observe it without any identification, without any engagement. So we start to look at it and go, yeah, I've got this feeling. What am I going to do with it? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to deliver it. When I had the feeling, for instance, of my brother, my brother died from alcoholism, left me with a massive amount of cognitive dissonance. I watched him die. I watched him buckle and bleed on the bed and explode. And it was painful. It was 42, left 4 children. And I am confused. My dad turns up to the hospital drunk. My mum is deeply Catholically ashamed. And I am so confused and so angry. I write a film about it, to clean it, and the film becomes this. Now, if you was to hold that, it's a weight. That's what it is. It's a massive weight. But I took that confusion and that fear and I created something beautiful. This isn't just a trophy. This is a key. This opens the doors to lots of prisoners that I've been to talk to. Geoff Thompson's going to come and talk to the visitors, to the prisoners. Who's Geoff Thompson? Oh, he's a BAFTA-winning writer. Oh, bring him in. So that is the responsibility. But that was about me centering myself and going, I'm going to look at this confusion, this chaos, and I'm going to create something beautiful from it. So I wrote a film that nobody wanted to hear. Certainly my family didn't want to hear, because there was too much shame around it and too much confusion. So I cleaned it by making a film. Have a look on the back. You see the nucleus.
Yeah.
And the nucleus and the atoms.
Wow.
There's where we want to be.
Yeah.
That's our nucleus. That's our soul. That's our self. And this is all of the chaos that will gravitate around us if we have to hold the center. So that's a literal example of taking my pain, my chaos. I was nearly in a fight at the hospital with my dad. It's so upsetting. And I wrote a film and I created this in order to literally take it from my dantian, from my stomach, put it into a film, put it into this trophy. Now this trophy takes me and allows me to go and speak to people, because they go, he must know something because he's won that. So that's just alchemy. That's taking the trauma that people have got and the pain that they're in and going, that's my doorway. That's my starting point. People like me are proof that it's possible.
And it sounds as if in that instance with your brother and your father and that chaos, it was that freeing yourself from denotation was the first step, was
Yes.
finding a way of standing back from the feeling, stripping away the labels, and now what you have is just a kind of power that you can
Massive
use.
power. And I'm not just cleaning for me, Max, I'm cleaning for my dad. My
Yeah.
dad couldn't articulate that. Was my dad drunk, or was he just in massive pain?
Mm.
He was in massive pain. My dad was brought up around a culture of drinking. It was no more
Yep.
different to him than putting on your shirt in the morning. Was my mum, was her shame bad, or was just that a very powerful 1,000-year-old conditioning? It was just conditioning. I can clean that for her. My mum can't articulate it, but I can articulate it for her, and I can clean for her. I can clean for my brother Ray. I can clean for my dad. My sister died from alcoholism as well, so I can clean hers. If I've got the courage to sit in the centre and organise the chaos and put it into something and overcome the fear that people in my family might not like it, once they see it, they know it comes from love and they'll be converted by it. So it's recognising that if there's massive fear in your life or massive chaos or massive doubts or whatever it is, then that's an energy source, especially if it's trauma-based. It's an energy source that if you can find your own center, you can use the energy source to create. So I've created, I've taken this message all around the world. I was invited to Las Vegas to teach for Chuck Norris twice. He paid all my expenses to go and stay over there for 10 days because he heard truth. So you take that truth and you say, this is what I've learned. This is the attribute of God that I've got. This is my yakin, my certainty. And of course, obviously, when you go to these places, you meet other people and it leads on to other things. And the opportunity to expand is endless because people will cross the world to touch the hand of somebody that's freed themselves from fear, freed themselves from trauma. I'm not a victim of anything. I never have been. I've just looked at it and thought, God, I've got a massive amount of energy here. And when I wasn't using it right, I was literally in hundreds of fights on nightclub doors, hundreds. I was in fights every night, sometimes 4 in one night, because that was the nature of the place, not the place I was living in, Max, the place I created. That's what I created from my own chaos, from my own fear, and this energy of God coming through me, going through very powerful filters and creating and allowing me to see my own chaos. There's your chaos. All these monsters turning up to fight you. There's your chaos. Where are they now? I'm being literal. They're not there. The nightclubs, the buildings have been knocked down, built into something else. Most of the people that I had fights with aren't here. They're either dead or they've moved on or they've become better people. Even the place where I was abused when I was a kid, and I wrote a film about that. The building where I was abused in got knocked down, was razed to the ground, and it was rebuilt around the corner as a boys and girls club. So we literally build infrastructure with our perception, and we can collapse the same infrastructure through the same process reversed. Bring the sin out, bring the mistakes out, bring the error out, bring the trauma out, bring it to light. That's what St. Paul said, that which we expose to light must itself become a light. So if people are sitting there now with trauma, let that be the doorway to emancipation. Let that be the doorway to knowledge. And don't let all of the voices of fear talk you out of it. Because if there's 20 voices trying to talk you out of it, you can be sure that it's a very powerful energy indeed that you've got and that you can use.
So powerful.
Yeah.
I have one last question for you. I want to respect your time, Geoff. Though I would love to have you on the podcast again in the future. But just to bring things to a close today, reading through the book, I was struck by when you're talking about forgiveness, it's primarily in the context of forgiveness of others, compassion for others. I wondered if, on your journey, self-directed compassion and forgiveness have been important. How you think about the possibility of forgiving ourselves, of compassion for ourselves, or is that not an important concept for you? You hear a lot of talk today about, in a mindfulness meditation context, about self-compassion. Is that an important concept for you?
Yeah, well, the main thing I got when I asked for knowledge that I was vowed to share, the main thing I got was that the main voices in the world talking about forgiveness, even the most powerful voices, even the greatest intellects, are still talking about forgiveness as letting people off. That's what they think it is. They think it's about. They think that forgiveness is a punitive thing. I'm letting this person off, or and if I don't, or if I let this person off, he might go and abuse again, or some people get away with things. And what I was trying to say with this is that the denotation is wrong. We haven't got the power to forgive. That isn't a human attribute. We have the power to give it over to a reciprocal force that can balance the books, but we don't have the power to do that. We only have the power to give it over to that force. And then people say, well, self-forgiveness is the hardest thing, but we don't have the power to do that either. That is, again, it's a divine attribute, but we do have the power to repent. So if you imagine that, if you imagine that repentance means returning to love, if you look at that again, if you look at the nucleus there, can you see the nucleus? So love is in the center, and when we're in places of distress, we're in the meteor belt, we're in the chaos, we're in the eye wall of the storm. We want to be in the center. So to repent means to return from these places and come back to love. We return to love. We repair to love. We find refuge in love. So that's what it's always about. It's about coming back to the very center of our being. But to do that, we have to look at all of these things, and we have to acknowledge them, and we have to find contrite remorse, or that will find us. And when we find contrite remorse, then it's dissipated, and then we've been forgiven. So the concept of forgiveness, like I said when I was studying the Judaic Kabbalah in order to write this book, I was led to 110 hours of lecture on repentance, not on forgiveness, but it was saying that you don't forgive, but you do repent. If you are contritely remorse, then it's already forgiven. You may still have to make a couple of phone calls. You may have to have a day in court. You may have to apologize to somebody, or somebody might have to apologize to you. It doesn't dismiss all that, but it's basically saying until we find contrite remorse, or until the other person finds contrite remorse, we can't let them off, and they can't let themselves off. They certainly can't escape it, because if we think they can escape it, it means we don't understand causation. Nobody escapes the consequence of their actions. In the Quran, it says that when we die, there'll be two queues, and the longest queue is the queue for excuse makers. Do not be an excuse maker. He said, in that queue, even your skin will speak a testimony against you. So in other words, we're carrying our mistakes and our errors in us. We can't escape them, but we can access them and look at them and be genuinely contritely remorse, and where we can make amends, and we could write it down, which is how I've done it. I've written confessional books about what a terrible husband I was in my first marriage, and the violence and all the mistakes I made. That's my way of cleaning it and saying, I'm not blaming anybody for any of this. I got abused when I was a kid, but this stuff that I did when I was violent to people happened on my shift. I have to take responsibility for that. I can't blame anybody else. Then when I take responsibility and I'm contritely remorse, then that energy format, that parasite or that demon or that divided thought breaks down into its component parts. The light in it is released, and the negative part is thrown back out into space. It's literal. So yeah, compassion and self-forgiveness can't occur until we first take responsibility for what we've done. If I've knocked somebody out and kicked their teeth out, it's no good me saying, well, it was because I was abused when I was a kid.
Right.
I still kicked that guy's teeth out. I did that. So I've got to look at that and go, I can't believe I did that. And I've gone through tremendous periods of contrite remorse. It's been very painful. I blame nobody for the stuff I did. Nobody. And that's how I've been able to find forgiveness for myself and compassion. Compassion because I was ignorant, compassion because I was unschooled, compassion because I was doing the wrong thing and thinking I was doing the right thing, compassion because I kept falling into the same trap again and again, and it was painful. And then eventually you just go, I'm not going to do that no more. It's too painful. And I'm going to write about it. So hopefully other people will learn from it. And if a guy like me can find emancipation, can find freedom from the kind of violent life I lived, then other people can too. The people who have lived the worst lives have the most potential for spiritual growth because they've got so much negativity to convert, so much light stored inside their darkness. Did you know every darkness within you, every fight I've had, every violence I've inflicted, every affair I've had, every negative thing I've done is animated by a light that's hidden in there like a diamond in a coal. And when I am contritely remorse, when I bring those things up and individuate them and look at them and go, yeah, that's mine, I did that, that negativity will dissipate and the light will be released and it will bind itself to my soul. I'll basically win my soul back. So the people who are most criminal have the most potential for spiritual growth. This is standard in the Judaic tree of life. There's a whole level just for the repentant. So it's saying to these kids that are in prison or these kids that are living difficult lives or these people that are unkind, there is always hope for you to become free from that if you are prepared to look at it and not blame. I could give you 20 reasons why I wasn't good in my first marriage. I can list all sorts of things, and I can paint my first wife black if I wanted to rationalize what I did.
Yeah.
But what I did. I had affairs.
Yeah.
I wasn't kind. I made tremendous mistakes, and I've been apologizing to my ex-wife from that day to this because I am absolutely so sure of what I did wrong, and I will not be doing that wrong again. It's too painful. But if even for a second I said I did this, but it's not contrite remorse. It's like rationalising its blame. You just go, whatever my wife done, that's her karma. I've just got to look at what I did and fix that. So I've got to bring myself back to my own centre. I've got to find my own nucleus. And I can only find that by going past all the dead bodies of my own past, my own karma. So as a teacher, I'm called to write about it and share it. But not everybody has to do that. You might want to journal, write it down, burn it, but just acknowledge it. And if you can make apologies and redress things, that's great. And if you're, if you're the victim and you need a day in court, you might need that. And if you're the aggressor and you're called to have a day in court, then you've got to take it on the chin. This is about looking at it and going, I accept the consequences of what I've done. But when we're able to do that, then forgiveness looks after itself. It works itself. The moment we actually are genuinely contrite with remorse, forgiveness happens all by itself. So it's not like we forgive ourselves, and it's not like we can forgive other people. We can't pardon them. Even the courts can't pardon them. They can pardon them in name, but unless somebody's contritely remorse, they're going to live with that inside them, and it's going to act as a karmic force until they literally get that parasite out of them. But I'm saying it just to remind people that these parasites, that these plundering energies, these Eckhart Tolle would call them pain bodies, they contain a massive amount of light. And our job is to retrieve that light. And we can only retrieve that light by no longer being scared of our own three-dimensional monsters. We have to absorb 99% of it by looking at it, sitting in it, marinating it, invite it in, come in, have a cup of tea, sit down. And then when we do that and we're no longer afraid of it and we can accept responsibility, that monster will be gone, its work will be done, and then the light will come over to you. And there's metaphors and parables throughout all the Bibles about this process. When the young Krishna, when Krishna was a boy, he said that King Kamsa was terrified of this new kid that was born that was going to take over his sovereignty. And King Kamsa sent a dozen demons to kill Krishna when he was a child. But Krishna wrestled them and defeated them. And he said their negative aspect was liberated in their light the effulgence came over to me and I owned it. And eventually he went through all these demons and tracked down King Kamsa, the Satan, who represents the ego. And he wrestled him and he defeated him. And all of the light that was in Kamsa came to him. So this is the same as Jung's individuation. This is the same as my fear pyramid, confronting fears, overcoming fears, releasing the negative aspect, and reclaiming the effulgence that's in it. That opportunity is open to everybody, every day, right now. And if they wanted to take my advice, I would say start doing good every day. And the things that you're doing that are not kind to other people, even if it's just gossip, all adds to the fatberg. Stop doing the negative things and start to increase the positive things. Everything from what you eat, to what you drink, to what you watch on television.
It all matters.
Communications you have. All of it does. It's all food.
Yeah.
If we eat, it's food, it's information, it's communication. If we're eating wrong, it's negative communication. What I watch on the television is food. It becomes flesh, literally. You know, the information is made of atoms. And if we take them in and we believe them, they've become part of who we are. They become part of our reality. They determine the screen we see. I don't see the screen of the world that I saw when I was on the door. At the moment, I'm in an old farmyard looking in a house with beams, looking out at acres and acres of field right across, as far as I can see. I'm right on the River Avon. I'm 100 yards from where Shakespeare was married. That's not just to move a house, that's a change of perception. But that's taken time. It's taken study. There's a great film called Doctor Strange. There's a great line in it where this surgeon goes to this mystic because he wants to learn. His hands have been battered in the car crash. He wants to fix them. And she shows him her metaphysical power, and he's amazed. He doesn't believe it until he feels it. And he says, God, how do I learn that? You've got to teach me. She said, well, how did you learn to become a surgeon? Hours and hours of study, hours and hours of practice. You dedicate. I got rid of everything in my life that wasn't about being a surgeon. I honed everything in on that one thing, and that's how I became. She said, why would this be any less? You know, we want to be able to create a positive world. That's an Olympic level expectation. So we've got to train and dedicate our life as though we were elite Olympians, and we can do that. We've got the choice to do that. That's why we get up. That's why we do the preparation. Just for that 30 minutes or 90 minutes that we're talking to somebody.
And so really, what I find so powerful about this message is that really every waking minute matters. And really every waking minute, the well-being of the universe is at stake in everything you do.
Yeah.
Your life couldn't matter more in a certain sense.
No, it's so important. And look after the children. Every time we speak, we are sending children into the world. And not being metaphorical, it's literal. We are sending spirit. This is what we're talking about now, is known in esoteric practice. Kota Dharmagaku, the use of magic sound. Heka, the use of magic sound. We're using sound waves coming from a directional intention in order to inspire people, to give people this spirit so that they can heal themselves, so that they can grow, that they can expand, that they can get themselves out of the prisons that they find themselves in. So when we think and speak, we are creating energy waves and we are sending children out into the world. And if we do that through a negative perception, we are sending an ill angel. If I do it from a negative perception, I'm sending a pure energy through a dark filter. It's going to go out in the world and it's going to work. And it's not going to serve me. It's not going to serve the world, and it will come back to me. Nothing is secret. Nothing is hidden. It's always just say to people, if they started to gossip about somebody, I'd say, just hold one sec. You're talking about Andy. Oh, let's just hold 1 second. Let me get my phone out. And I'll put the recorder on because I'm seeing Andy later, and I'll tell him everything you said. And I'll let him have a listen to it. I'm sure he'd listen to hear it. What did you want to say about Andy? Oh, he's lovely. Andy's lovely. Everything is recorded, Max. Everything is. We think it's hidden, but that's just naivety. It's because we don't understand the laws of the world. We don't understand basic causation. We don't understand that everything is recorded. So if this is what Buckminster Fuller talks about in his book, The Critical Path. He said when he had a breakdown and then had a breakthrough at the age of 40, he realized the power of words, the power of sound. He said, I didn't speak for a year because I didn't know what I was saying and I didn't want to damage anybody. Man, we can do so much damage, but we can do so much good. So much good. Communication is actuated love. But don't forget that when we eat a sandwich, it's a communication between energies. You know, when we watch, 20 murders before breakfast on the news, that's a communication. But it's coming from a very negative place and it's inhabiting us. So we've got to make sure our communications are all from a place of love. As I always say to my friend Debs, either be nice or be neutral. But know that what you say will have an effect. Even if no one's listening, it's going to go out into the world and it's going to work. It's very powerful. It's a little bit frightening because we have to take responsibility for everything. But it's also very inspiring because it's saying, well, if I want to change the world, that's down to me. You change yourself and then the world will suddenly miraculously start to change.
Well, Geoff Thompson, I think that is as good a note for us to finish on as any. I come away from this conversation as I came away from your book, just feeling roused, called upon, profoundly inspired. I think that every moment of my waking life and my sleeping life counts in a way that I hadn't been able to articulate before encountering you. So I'm so grateful to you, Geoff. And thank you for such generosity with your time today as well. I have no doubt that people listening will find much of tremendous value. If they would like to learn more about what you do, where can they go?
I post. I'm not on my Instagram page, so I post on the internet, but I'm not really on it. My friend Gabriella runs my page for me. I post on there a lot, and anything I'm doing, any events I'm doing, I post on there. I don't do loads at the moment, but there's hundreds and hundreds of articles on there, and there's access to all different things, lots of interviews I've done. So it's Geoff_Thompson_official. No, that's on Instagram. So it's Geoff Thompson Official on Instagram. That's you can be sure that's the only presence I have on the internet. There are other sites with my name that aren't me.
Okay.
I've been hijacked in certain places, and I think it's by very well-meaning people. But it's that there's lots of old me on there, but that's the only place that's authentically what I'm doing now.
Right.
And that will lead you to all of my films that I've written are on there. You can access I think Gabriel has put a YouTube page up for me, and all of my films. I've done lots of films about my brother's death and different things like that. They're all online, free. That they can watch them all on there. So we've put as much information out there as we can for people. I consider my Instagram page to be a food bank. It's where you can get powerful communication. It's just coming from a place of love.
Wonderful. Well, I will put some links to your book and your TED Talk and other resources in the show notes, as well as directing people to the Instagram page. But all that remains is to say once again, Geoff, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Max. It's great to speak to you.